Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 series, Can We Save the Oakland A's? And we are at the beginning of spring training in this 2033 season. This year is going to be a great test as to whether or not we can save the A's. We lost a lot of talented veterans this past off season, and although we made a few trades early in the offseason, we signed only one veteran free agent. So there's going to be, ultimately, we believe when we get to the beginning of the season, a bit of a youth movement with the Oakland A's, hopefully harnessing some of the talent that we picked up in the draft, in the IAFA pool, and through scouting finds over the past several years. If we're able to make the playoffs for the fourth time in the past 5 seasons with this significantly retooled roster, I'd view it as a pretty positive sign that we have made some significant progress in terms of saving these A's. And before we get going with what I think will be a short episode, although I say that sometimes and end up lying to you, I just want to start off again by thanking all of our loyal viewers. Do sincerely appreciate those of you who watch us regularly. I know some of you always throw us a thumbs up right when the episodes come out, and give us some comments and help promote some engagement with our channel to help us build this channel. And I do appreciate all of the interaction and the input and the insight in the comment section from our loyal viewers. So just wanted to start off this episode thanking you all again for keeping me from just being a crazy middle-aged man talking to himself while playing a computer baseball game, because without you viewers, that is where I am. And I mentioned that we only made one significant free agent signing this past off season. That's the veteran shortstop Maui Ahuna, who will be taking over for our longtime shortstop, Mr. Rincon. Ahuna, pretty similar defensively. I think one notch lower than where Rincon was on, I believe, either his error or arm rating, but should be a very competent defensive shortstop. The question with Ahuna is how much he's going to hit. Over the course of his major league career, he's had just a 74 WRC plus, but he is the best defensive shortstop in our organization, and has, over the course of his major league career, been a bit above replacement level when you combine his good glove with his poor bat. Was not a long-term commitment that we made to Ahuna. In fact, we can get out of it after this year. But if we decide, when all is said and done after this spring training, that we want to focus on a glove-only shortstop, we've got a pretty good one available to us this season in Mr. Ahuna. But we do have some other options in the organization, and as we get ready for the final shorter session in our development lab here, 3 of those players are going to be getting some attention. Sergio Estrada, Hideki Arakawa, and Andy Toribio are all working on their defense. Estrada is a guy we signed a year ago. If that range was higher with that bat, I think he'd be a potentially pretty interesting shortstop for us. Like the fact that he's a switch hitter. Was not great for us in AAA Las Vegas a year ago. Although he did have 30 home runs, he somehow still ended up with a 92 WRC plus, which is pretty hard to do, quite honestly. But I think that Estrada could be a useful offensive player for us, and would love to see a little more out of him defensively. Hideki Arakawa, honestly, over the course of his major league career, has a 73 WRC plus, so in the very same world as Ahuna in terms of his offensive production. Not quite as good defensively as Ahuna, but he is a left-handed bat who could potentially factor into a platoon at some point. And maybe the long shot, but the player who could be the most interesting is the youngest of the group, Andy Toribio. Pretty versatile defensive player. Looks like he could be a competent defensive infielder. Still question the bat a bit. Did hit 268 for us in 224 at-bats in AAA last year, was a bit above average offensively. The right-handed hitter is durable, and like Estrada and Arakawa, he'll be working on his defense. Amari Raphael, who did a good job with his control on a recently completed program, is going to work on his defense at pitcher. Jaden Boakai, who by default is going to get the opportunity to be our starting catcher this upcoming season after a really nice year in AAA last year. Like his defense, I think his bat can be interesting for a catcher, but you can see he's got basically no speed and he has horrible base running instincts. You can't get much worse than this. Allegedly, it's a relatively easy program for him to work on his base running fundamentals, so we'll find out whether there's any point at all in investing in base running with someone who is so inept at it as Boakai. 3 other programs with the 3 youngish guys that we've signed to long-term contracts. Kevin Stubblefield and Berner Cabral going to both work on their defense, and Jake Ortega is going to work on his base stealing technique. He got a bump in his eye when he was in the development lab this past offseason. Stole 13 bases last year in 14 attempts, so he was really efficient. But for whatever reason, he did not run as much as I would have thought he would. And hopefully improving his base stealing technique may help him be a little more proficient than he even was on the base paths this upcoming season. So some of the younger guys in our organization in the development lab for the next 4 to 5 weeks as we go through spring training. And other than their development, the big thing for us to hope is that players generally remain healthy. Chris Carl, guy who in theory would be fighting for a spot at the back end of our bullpen, left-hander who we picked in the 11th round in 2027, still recovering from that torn flexor tendon in his elbow that he suffered right at the end of the 2032 season. Going to be out another couple of months, so he will not be making the roster out of spring training, but perhaps will be able to help us later on this year. And things just got interesting in terms of those middle infielders that are in the development lab because Maui Ahuna just fractured his foot. Only going to be out for 4 weeks, but with the season starting on March 31st, likely to miss about the first week of the season. Also going to miss a good chunk of spring training, obviously, so may need a quick rehab assignment in AAA before we bring him back, but that's going to make it real interesting for us to decide who's going to be making the 26-man roster as far as our middle infielders and particularly our starting shortstop situation, with the fact that at least for the first week or so of the season, Ahuna seems unlikely to be available for us. And we've made it to the end of spring training. Obviously, Chris Carl still going to be on the IL for another month and a half at this point. Maui Ahuna only 3 days away from a potential return. And as it turns out, the season starts in 3 days, so we may not have as much flexibility with the 26-man roster as we thought. But I think given that he's been out for a month and he is a fragile guy who is in his 30s, it probably will make sense to give Ahuna a couple of games in AAA at the start of the year to kind of get warmed up a little bit and ensure that he's not cold. When all was said and done, was a pretty respectable preseason and spring training for the A's. You can see our 16-8 record, one of the best in all of baseball. Granted, they were preseason games, but given the amount of turnover we had and the number of guys that we were just kind of training up in new positions and trying to get a look at, the fact that we were pretty successful on the field is hopefully a good sign as we prepare to begin this 2033 season in Oakland. And as we get ready for that season to begin in 3 days, we're going to make some obvious cuts to the roster over the next few days, but probably we'll wait until we find out exactly what happened in the development lab before making some of the final cuts. Kind of mixed results. Omari Raphael looks like he's on track to improve his defense at pitcher. Boakai, his lack of physical talent in terms of speed and running and instincts on the base paths may be working against him there. Estrada is on track on his defensive program, and Arakawa is excelling. However, Andy Toribio is frustrated. Kevin Stubblefield and Berner Cabral are both on track with their attempts to improve their defensive skills. Unfortunately, Jake Ortega working on base stealing technique, like Boakai with his base running fundamentals, is frustrated with how he's done as we close into the final days of the development lab here in the 2032 to 2033 offseason. And we made the easy cuts on our team, simmed ahead to opening day to find out exactly what happened in the development lab. And it was a very successful session for us. 6 successful programs, 1 outstanding program, and only 1 with no improvement. Omari Raphael improved his defense at pitcher, which was one of the few weaknesses we think this young prospect has. So that's good. Jaden Boakai ended up improving his base running skills a bit surprisingly, although his base running rating improved by less than 5 points. Not even something that is visible here. So although he had a successful program, looks like his physical limitations kept that from doing much. Sergio Estrada looks like a little bit of improvement with his arm, his range, his error rating, and his turn 2 rating. Can't see too much here in his defensive ratings. I think his error may be a little higher than when we just checked in on him, but rounding area largely. Hideki Arakawa, his error rating and his turn 2 rating both definitely improved 5 points. He had outstanding results, and Arakawa is now 65s across the board defensively. With that left-handed bat, he could be interesting. Toribio, no improvement. Kevin Stubblefield improved his defense at first base. Arm and range both improved by about 5, as well as a little bit of improvement in his error and his turn 2 ratings. Jake Ortega, base running technique improved. Supposedly his stealing and his stealing aggressiveness both a little bit better than they were. And last but not least, Bobby Cabral defensively, small improvements in his arm and range, and supposedly a 5-point improvement in his outfield error rating. Although, I think I can see that there. So all in all, pretty successful. 5 of the 8 long programs were successful or outstanding, and 7 of the 8 shorter programs that we did were successful or outstanding. So pretty productive winter in the development lab here for the Oakland Athletics organization. And we've made the difficult decisions to bring this roster down to 26 players that have headed north with us to Oakland from Arizona. We are going to start Maui Ahuna on a rehab assignment in AAA. Don't think he's going to be there all that long, so we will have another roster move coming. But going to kind of delay a potentially interesting decision for at least a few days and give the veteran Ahuna, who has missed the last 3.5 weeks of action in spring training, an opportunity to hopefully shake a little bit of the rust off before he begins facing major league pitching. The starting rotation largely as expected. Jackson Ferris back as our number 1 starter in what may be his final season in Oakland. Chase Burns, can probably say the same thing about him. This could be his final season in Oakland as well. Mason Miller back as our number 3 starter after one of the better years of his career. Jason DeCaro will be our 4th starter, And then the newly acquired Jamie DeVore will get the first crack at being our number 5 starter this year. Andrew Nardi, in his likely final year with Oakland, is going to get the opportunity to be our closer. He served in that role a couple times last year with mixed results. Start getting into some of the youngsters rounding out our bullpen. Jeremy Scholl, who was a rookie for us last year with a 3.65 ERA, should be a key setup man this year as a right-handed arm. Henry Lelane, 28-year-old, spent his first year in Oakland last year, back as a lefty setup man. And Levi Sterling, hopefully going to get his first full-time chance in the majors. The 26-year-old was a third-round pick back in 2024 in the first draft that we did in Oakland. He has had some injuries the last couple years, but he's had a small opportunity in Oakland where he's done pretty well with a 139 ERA plus and an 89 FIP minus. Has some of the best stuff in our organization with an outstanding curve, slider, and fastball. He is a guy who conceivably could be a starter for us also. Since Sterling has only pitched 13 games at the major league level at this point, we're going to start him out in the bullpen. But if DeVore isn't as expected, or somebody else gets banged up, or just falls off in terms of the effectiveness, Levi Sterling, conceivably with that outstanding stuff, could get a try in our rotation in the not too distant future. RJ Cope, third-round pick out of high school in 2026 for us, is going to get to make his major league debut. He was only okay in AAA last year. The left-hander is fragile physically, but he is finally out of options, so we're going to give him, the 6'8 lefty, an opportunity to pitch with us. Caden Dana, another guy who could start for us in a pinch, is going to be back in a middle relief role. Conceivably, he could start for us at some point this year, although, as I noted, I think Levi Sterling probably gets the first crack at a spot in the rotation if he performs as we think he may out of the bullpen. Alex Vesia back as a left-handed middle reliever for us. And then Ian Auth, who we picked up last year when we traded away in this past offseason. Chase DeLauder is a guy who actually still has options, but we're going to give the 25-year-old, who looks like he's got a pretty good combination of things in terms of his stuff, movement, and control. Excellent fastball. The slider is his out pitch is decent at best, but we'll see what he can do. We've got some other youngish depth in AAA as well, along with the top pitching prospects in the organization, the Amari Raphaels and the Jaheim Pennymans, who are a little further away. So think that getting the opportunity to see what the likes of Sterling can do, Scholl, a second full-time season, RJ Cope and Ian Auth basically making their major league debut in the case of Cope, and his debut and first full season in the majors with Oakland in the case of Auth. A little bit of youth being added onto our pitching staff this year, and hopefully it will serve us well. Turning to the 13 everyday players who are coming north with us, as we alluded to earlier, Jaden Boakai is going to get the opportunity to be our starting catcher after a really nice season plus in AAA for us. You may remember back several years ago, there were a few drafts where there were decent catchers just lingering into the middle rounds of the draft. Boakai is a guy that we thought was really good value in the 9th round in 2027. We think he's got a potentially useful major league bat with a pretty interesting glove, and he is going to get the opportunity to take over as our everyday starter. The backup, a bit of an upset. Adonis Guzman, a guy who was a minor league free agent signing of ours over a year ago, was basically a backup in AAA for us last year, but his defense is outstanding. He's also got a great personality and is a captain personality type, which can always help a little bit on the margins. He has not been much of a major league hitter with a 60 WRC plus, but hopefully we'll use him similar to the way he was used in Boston at the beginning of his career as a backup, starting 30, 35 games a year. We do have some other guys in AAA, but went with the defense and the strong personality as our backup for Boakai. Kyle Manzardo, going to be our starting first baseman. Picked him up in the big trade this past offseason, where we moved on from our previous starting catcher, Drake Baldwin, as well as Juan Rodas, who was one of the better prospects in our organization. Really excited to see what Manzardo can do for us. He is a one-year rental. We got the Guardians to retain most of his contract, but think that bat in the middle of our lineup can really help us. Kevin Stubblefield, the youngster, is only going to be in the lineup regularly against left-handed pitching, although we will work to mix and match him in first base, DH, corner, outfield spots against right-handed pitching to ensure that he gets a little bit more regular playing time. Hideki Arakawa, the left-handed hitting infielder, is going to be our second baseman, at least for the next few days, but his roster spot could be in jeopardy. Colt Keith back as our starting third baseman. We signed him to that 5-year deal, and certainly going to be interesting to see if at the age of 31, with his fragile injury proneness, he can produce the way he has through his first 4 years in an Oakland uniform. Justin LeBron is going to be our starting second baseman against left-handed pitching. LeBron and Arakawa are two guys whose spots on the roster could be in jeopardy if we have, or when we have Mr. Ahuna coming back. But for the time being, they'll be platooning at second base. Sergio Estrada is going to be our everyday shortstop until Ahuna is back. I don't love the 60 range for a shortstop, but the 80 error, the 70 arm, and the 60 turn double play are certainly fine. Think that his bat could be, I don't want to say above average, but think his bat could be non-embarrassing at the major league level. And given his solid defense and his versatility, really interested in seeing what this former international free agent can do for us. In theory, his spot could also be in jeopardy when we look to bring Ahuna up. I would think Arakawa, LeBron, and Estrada are the guys who could be in jeopardy. Xavier Isaac, a guy we traded for this past offseason, and we got Tampa to retain the vast majority of his contract. We had to give away a really good backup catcher in Max Kaufer to pick him up, but think that trade made sense for us in terms of another rental, but a solid left-handed bat who will be our DH against righties. Jake Ortega, the Rookie of the Year in 2032 in the American League, going to hit second and play left against right-handed pitching, and he'll be our leadoff hitter and center fielder against left-handed pitching. Luis Taveras, back after being with us as a September call-up last year and in the playoffs. He combined for 42 homers and over 100 ribbies in AA and AAA last year. Taveras will be in the lineup for us regularly against left-handed pitching, where he'll actually be batting cleanup between Keith and Manzardo with his right-handed bat. Luis Lara will be our starting center fielder against right-handed pitching, and then Bobby Cabral, coming off of a pretty productive first season in Oakland, 39 homers and 108 ribbies after he picked him up in a trade with Detroit, is going to be our starting right fielder. So, as I noted, there will be another roster move likely coming, probably at the end of this first weekend of the season, when we need to figure out what to do with Ahuna. And again, I think Arakawa, LeBron, and Estrada are the ones whose roster spots are in the most jeopardy at this point. LeBron was our only captain personality for parts of last year, which is certainly a reason to keep him around. But as I noted, we've got Adonis Guzman as a captain personality on the team and a backup catcher now. And importantly, when we think about team chemistry, Jason DeCaro, whose ratings must be very borderline, has moved back and forth over the last season and a half and so between having a captain personality and not having a captain personality. He's back, at least for the time being, with a captain personality as our number 4 starter. No guarantees that that's going to stay, but team chemistry looks happy right now. So we do have the 3 captains on the team at this point, which could put LeBron's roster spot in a bit of jeopardy. He does still have 3 option years left, although he's making decent money this year at $3 million. Also have some additional leaders and a spark plug in Chris Carl, who's on the IL with that injury from last fall. No negative personalities on the major league team, so would expect that hopefully the clubhouse will be in pretty decent shape as this 2033 season gets underway. Taking a look at the preseason predictions, and once again, expectations, at least from the betting public and the media, are not particularly high for the A's. We're projected to go 80-82, 4th place, 7 games out in what's expected to be a pretty tight race in the American League West. ERA of 4.28 looks like it's pretty middle of the pack for the American League, which is not typically what we've done over the years, but you never know what can happen. I certainly think we'll be better than that, but we will find that out in the coming episodes. You can look at some of the guys expected to have big seasons here. Wyatt Langford for Texas, 300 average, 47 homers, and 103 ribbies. Colt Keith in this simulation had a nice bounce back year, 278, 34 homers, 110 ribbies. Steve Tudor, the brilliant young pitcher for the Royals, expected to go 16-7 with an ERA of around 3. Looking at some of the guys expected to have big years in the National League, Steve Flatt, the first baseman for the Phillies, 315 average, 49 homers, and 132 ribbies in this sim. Our former outfielder from last year, Juan Soto, expected to have a big year, as is Shoji Bame for both of them for the Dodgers. The knuckleballer Andres Rojas expected to have a big year for Miami. And interestingly, this is probably one of the worst trades we ever made. Jacob Misiorowski is now a starting pitcher for Colorado, projected to go 13-8 with 226 strikeouts. I'm guessing that's probably the worst trade we've ever made when we dealt him away right before the trade deadline in 2028. Yeah, we got a little bit of cash, and we got third baseman Esteban Meza in return, a guy who is still lingering in A-ball for us as a part-time player. Actually was a full-time player last year because we promoted him from rookie ball, so still like Meza's glove. Question whether he's really going to be a major league hitter, only 21 years old, but Misiorowski is having a pretty nice career for the Rockies after we moved on for him. Won 14 games each of the last 2 years, although he has led the league in walks each time. He's also led the league in strikeouts per 9 innings each season, so probably gave up on Mr. Misiorowski a little bit too early. And interestingly, we were concerned about that control, but his profile with the excellent stuff, above average movement and then below average control, does look somewhat similar to Levi Sterling, the guy that we were just talking about. He's got the excellent stuff. Movement not quite as good, so he's going to give up some homers, but his control may be a little bit better. So perhaps we'll be able to get some production out of Levi Sterling in the rotation this year. Again, we're going to go with the 4 guys who are coming back, plus Jamie DeVore, who we think can be pretty respectable for us. But DeVore is fragile, and he, over the course of his brief major league career, has not been particularly impressive in the 2 parts of 2 seasons he's spent with the Braves. So could be seeing Sterling in the rotation in the not too distant future. And with that, we will call it an episode. As we noted, the prognosticators are not expecting much from Oakland, expecting us to go 80-82, have a losing record. We are certainly expecting to do more than that. Ownership expects us to reach the playoffs this year. They also want us to upgrade at second base, to steal some more bases this season, and then longer term we need to work on improving our attendance, improving our draft record, improving our fan interest, and building a team that can win a second championship for us by 2038. So this year, just the reaching the playoffs is an average priority goal, and then second base and stolen base improvements are low priority. We are in the last year of our contract here, so might be general managing these A's for our job, and we will find out how this season goes and whether we still have a job at the end of October over the next several episodes. Until our next time around, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.